I'm Jason Mitchell, 32, a software engineer from Boston who just got the call no one wants. My sister Stephanie's voice was ice cold. We think it's better if you don't come to Thanksgiving this year. The golden child had spoken. Despite my career success and stable life, I've always been the family outcast while Stephanie wears the crown. That phone call should have crushed me, but instead, it ignited something unexpected. Before I tell you how I turned this family betrayal into my greatest victory, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button while I reveal how sometimes being unwelcome leads to the most welcoming change in your life. Growing up in a quiet Minneapolis suburb, I was the middle child sandwiched between my older sister Stephanie, now 35, and younger sister Megan, 27. Our house on Maple Street looked picture-perfect from the outside. White picket fence, neatly trimmed lawn, and a basketball hoop in the driveway. But inside those walls, the family dynamic was anything but balanced. From my earliest memories, it was clear my parents, Richard and Susan Mitchell, had a favorite. Stephanie could do no wrong in their eyes. She was the straight-A student, the varsity volleyball captain, the student body president, and even when she wasn't any of those things, my parents spoke about her as if she was. Their eyes literally lit up when she entered a room. "Your sister is just naturally gifted," my dad would say whenever I questioned why Stephanie got special treatment. Mom would add, "You just need to apply yourself more, Jason." But no matter how much I applied myself, the goalpost always moved. When Stephanie turned 16, my parents surprised her with a brand new Honda Civic, complete with a giant red bow on top. 2 years later, when my 16th birthday rolled around, Dad handed me the classified ads. "Time to find a job and save up for your own car, son. It builds character." I worked 20 hours a week at the local grocery store throughout high school to afford a rusted Chevy that broke down every other month. The pattern continued through every milestone. When Stephanie made honor roll, we went out for a family dinner at the fanciest restaurant in town. When I made honor roll, I got a "Good job, buddy," as my parents continued watching TV. When I won the state science fair in 10th grade, beating out students from 42 other schools, my parents couldn't attend because Stephanie had a minor cold and needed them home. My younger sister Megan learned early on how the family hierarchy worked. She aligned herself with Stephanie, becoming a loyal lieutenant who echoed whatever opinion our older sister expressed. "Jason's being dramatic again," she'd say, mimicking Stephanie's exact tone. In return, she received some of the golden glow that always surrounded our older sister. By the time I reached senior year, I'd made a decision that would change my life. I applied only to colleges on the East Coast. I needed distance, physical, emotional, psychological distance from the family dynamic that had shaped my self-worth for 18 years. When I got accepted to MIT with a partial scholarship, my parents seemed almost surprised. "Well, I guess all that tinkering with computers paid off," Dad said, as if my years of dedication were just a hobby. Boston became my sanctuary. I thrived in an environment where people judged me for my own merits rather than comparing me to Stephanie. I graduated with honors, landed a job at a leading tech company, and met Rachel, a brilliant architect who saw me for who I truly was. Rachel, with her warm brown eyes and ability to call out nonsense, became my partner in building a life that felt authentic. For years, I kept my family at arm's length, polite calls on birthdays and major holidays, occasional visits when absolutely necessary. It worked. The distance helped me establish my own identity and success on my terms. 2 years ago, after some encouragement from Rachel, I decided to try rebuilding bridges with my family. "They're still your family," she said. "And maybe things can be different now that you're all adults." I wanted to believe she was right. The initial steps seemed promising. My parents appeared impressed with my career progression and genuinely liked Rachel. Stephanie, now working as a marketing manager at a local company in Minneapolis and married to her college boyfriend Thomas, seemed less competitive. Even Megan, who had recently graduated with a teaching degree, started forming her own opinions instead of just parroting Stephanie's. During family video calls, I felt a cautious optimism. Maybe we could move past the old patterns. Maybe as adults, we could forge healthier relationships. The last in-person family gathering, my cousin's wedding 6 months ago, had gone relatively smoothly, with only minor instances of my parents fawning over Stephanie's recent promotion while barely asking about my work. I believed we were making progress. That's why the call from Stephanie hit me like a physical blow. Just when I thought we were moving forward, it seemed we were right back where we started, with me on the outside, unwelcome in my own family. The call came on a Tuesday evening in early November. Rachel and I had just finished dinner, a new pasta recipe we'd been excited to try, and were debating which show to stream when my phone lit up with Stephanie's name. "Hey Steph, what's up?" I answered casually, putting the call on speaker so I could continue loading the dishwasher. "Jason, I need to talk to you about Thanksgiving," she started, her voice carrying that familiar tone, the one she used when delivering what she considered important family announcements. "We've been discussing the plans, and we think it might be better if you and Rachel don't come this year." My hand froze midway to placing a plate in the rack. "What? Why wouldn't we come? We already bought the plane tickets." Rachel looked up from the couch, her expression shifting from relaxed to concerned. "Well, it's just that things have been a bit tense lately, and Mom and Dad think it would be better for family harmony if you sit this one out. Maybe join for Christmas instead, if things settle down." "Tense? What are you talking about?" "The last time we all talked was that group call for Dad's birthday, and everything seemed fine. I abandoned the dishes completely now, my full attention on the conversation." Stephanie sighed dramatically. "Jason, you always do this. You cause drama and then pretend you don't know what's happening. Everyone's walking on eggshells around you lately. Mom's been stressed about it for weeks." "What drama?" "Stephanie, I literally live 1,000 miles away. How could I possibly be causing drama?" My voice was rising despite my attempts to stay calm. "This is exactly what I mean," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "You get defensive immediately. Look, it's not a big deal. It's just one holiday. Mom and Dad agree it's for the best. Megan does too." The casual way she spoke for our entire family, as if they'd held a formal vote on my exclusion, made my stomach knot. "Did Mom and Dad actually say they don't want me there, or is this coming from you? Does it matter? We're all in agreement. Anyway, I've got to go. Thomas and I are meeting friends for drinks. Just wanted to let you know before you finalize any plans." And with that, she hung up, leaving me standing in my kitchen, phone in hand, trying to process what had just happened. Rachel was already by my side. "What was that about?" she asked, though from her expression, I could tell she'd heard enough to understand. "Apparently, I'm not welcome at Thanksgiving this year. I'm causing too much drama." My voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. I set the phone down and leaned against the counter, suddenly feeling exhausted. "That's ridiculous," Rachel said, her eyes flashing with anger. "What drama could you possibly be causing from Boston? You barely even talk to them except for scheduled calls." I shook my head. "I don't know. But Stephanie claims everyone agrees, Mom, Dad, Megan, they all think it's better if I don't come." Rachel watched me carefully. "Do you believe that? That they all actually said that?" Her question made me pause. It was so easy to fall into old patterns, to accept what Stephanie said as the family gospel. "I don't know," I admitted. "It's always been easier for everyone to go along with whatever Stephanie wants. I think you should talk to your parents directly," Rachel suggested. "Don't let Stephanie be the gatekeeper here." That night, sleep eluded me. I tossed and turned beside Rachel, replaying the conversation with Stephanie, thinking of all the things I should have said. My mind raced through possible scenarios, showing up anyway, canceling completely, confronting my parents. By morning, my eyes were gritty from lack of sleep, and my thoughts were no clearer. I tried calling my parents the next day, but the calls went straight to voicemail. Texts went unanswered too. It was as if a wall had suddenly been erected between me and my family, with Stephanie as the architect. After my third unanswered call to my parents, I decided to try Megan. As the youngest, she had often been caught in the middle of family tensions, and lately, she'd shown signs of forming her own opinions. Maybe she would give me a straight answer. Jason? Megan sounded surprised to hear from me. Is everything okay? Not really, I said. Stephanie called last night and told me I'm not welcome at Thanksgiving. She said everyone agrees with her. Is that true? There was a long pause. I could almost picture Megan biting her lip, caught between loyalty to Stephanie and whatever truth she knew. It's complicated, she finally said. Stephanie's been talking a lot about how you've changed, how you think you're better than us now with your Boston life and tech job. She showed Mom and Dad some texts where you supposedly said some really critical things about the family. What texts? I never sent anything like that. The accusation was so absurd it momentarily left me speechless. Megan's voice dropped lower. I haven't actually seen them. But Stephanie was really upset, said you made fun of Dad's business struggles and Mom's crafting hobby. Everyone's been really tense about it. A cold realization washed over me. Stephanie wasn't just excluding me, she was actively turning my family against me with fabricated evidence. Megan, I never sent any texts like that. You have to believe me. Another pause. I don't know what to believe anymore, Jason. But something doesn't feel right about all this. Stephanie's been different lately, especially whenever your name comes up. It's like she gets, I don't know, threatened or something. That word, threatened, lingered in my mind after we hung up. Rachel noticed my distracted state when she came home from work. What happened? She asked, setting down her bag and sitting beside me on the couch. I recounted my conversation with Megan, the alleged texts, and the strange silence from my parents. I feel like I'm going crazy. Like I've stepped into some alternate reality where I'm suddenly the family villain. Rachel took my hand, her expression serious. Jason, this isn't about you going crazy. This is about Stephanie manipulating your family. Think about it. Your career is taking off, we're talking about buying a home, maybe starting a family soon. Meanwhile, from what you've told me, Stephanie's always needed to be the successful one, the center of attention. You think she's jealous? The concept seemed foreign. Stephanie had always been the golden child, the successful one. I think she's terrified of losing her position in the family. And instead of dealing with those feelings like an adult, she's trying to cut you out completely. Rachel squeezed my hand. The question is, are you going to let her? Her words struck a chord. For so long, I'd accepted my position as the family outcast, had even escaped to the other side of the country to build a life away from that dynamic. But now, with Stephanie actively trying to sever my family ties completely, something in me rebelled against the old pattern. No, I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. I'm not going to let her do this. Rachel smiled, a mixture of pride and determination in her eyes. Then it's time to stand up for yourself. For real this time. That night, I couldn't sleep again, but for a different reason. My mind was cataloging a lifetime of incidents that I'd previously dismissed or rationalized away. With Rachel's perspective helping me see more clearly, patterns emerged that I couldn't unsee. Last Christmas had been particularly revealing, though I hadn't fully recognized it at the time. We'd all gathered at my parents' house in Minneapolis, Stephanie and Thomas, Megan, Rachel and me. The living room was decorated with the same ornaments and lights that had adorned our childhood holidays, the air filled with the scent of Mom's cinnamon rolls. When it came time to open presents, everyone received thoughtfully wrapped packages, except me. Mom looked confused, then embarrassed. Oh, Jason, I'm so sorry. I think we forgot to put yours under the tree. Let me check upstairs. She returned with a hastily wrapped package containing a generic sweater that was 2 sizes too large. It was clear it had been purchased last minute, perhaps even that morning. Later, I overheard Stephanie telling Mom, "Don't worry about it. Jason's probably too busy with his fancy Boston life to care about family traditions anyway." Then there was my college graduation from MIT. My parents had nearly missed it entirely because Stephanie had called the night before, claiming she was having a personal crisis and needed them. They'd caught a later flight, arriving just as the ceremony was ending. I'd walked across the stage, scanned the audience, and seen only empty seats where my family should have been. They apologized profusely afterward, but I later learned from a cousin that Stephanie's emergency had been a fight with her boyfriend, one that had conveniently resolved itself right after my graduation ceremony would have ended. My Uncle Martin, Dad's brother, had noticed the pattern years ago. During a family barbecue when I was in my early 20s, he'd pulled me aside. "You know it's not right how they treat you compared to your sisters, don't you?" he'd said, his eyes serious. "Especially Stephanie. Richard and Susan are good people, but they've got a blind spot a mile wide when it comes to that girl." I'd brushed off his concern, uncomfortable with acknowledging what he was saying. "It's fine. Families are complicated." "Complicated, yes. Unfair, no," he'd insisted. "Just don't let it make you think you're worth any less, because you're not." I'd carried his words with me, even as I continued to excuse my family's behavior. When Stephanie took credit for connecting me with a potential client at the last family reunion, a connection I'd actually made through my own professional network, I'd let it slide. "It's not worth making a scene," I told Rachel afterward. "That's just how Stephanie is." Rachel had been more perceptive. "That's not just how she is, that's her deliberately undermining your accomplishments. There's a difference." Now, sitting in our Boston apartment with the realization that Stephanie was actively trying to exclude me from the family, Rachel's observations over the years suddenly clicked into place. She'd seen what I'd been trained not to see, that Stephanie's behavior wasn't normal sibling rivalry but something more calculated. The next day, I had a scheduled session with Dr. Wilson, a therapist I'd been seeing occasionally for the past year to work through various aspects of my life. I hadn't planned to discuss my family situation, but as soon as I sat down, the whole story came pouring out. "What you're describing sounds like a family system with firmly established roles," Dr. Wilson said after listening carefully. "In family systems theory, we often see how families unconsciously assign roles to each member. It sounds like your sister was assigned the role of the successful one, the golden child, while you were cast as the other one, or perhaps the problem." "But why?" I asked. "Why would my parents do that? It rarely happens consciously," he explained. "It often stems from the parents' own unresolved issues or needs. The important thing is that these roles can become so entrenched that when someone tries to change, like you becoming successful and happy in Boston, it threatens the entire family system. Your sister may be trying to force you back into your old role because your growth challenges her identity as the golden child." His explanation made a disturbing amount of sense. "So what do I do now?" "That depends on what you want," he said. "If you want a healthier relationship with your family, it might require disrupting these patterns. That's not easy, and not everyone in your family will thank you for it initially. The question is whether maintaining the current dynamic is more painful than the discomfort of challenging it." That evening, I did something I'd never done before. I methodically went through old emails, texts, and social media exchanges with my family. I created a document and noted dates, exact quotes, and patterns. What emerged was a clear timeline of Stephanie's manipulations and my parents' enabling behavior. The text messages Megan had mentioned were nowhere to be found, because they had never existed. But there were plenty of real messages showing how Stephanie consistently undermined me, reframed my accomplishments as either luck or something she had helped make happen, and subtly suggested to my parents that I thought less of them because I'd moved away. I showed the document to Rachel, who read it carefully. "This isn't in your head, Jason," she said firmly. "This is real. And it's been happening for years." "I know," I said, and for the first time, I truly did know. The weight of that knowledge was both heavy and, strangely, liberating. "I can't keep pretending this is normal or okay. So what are you going to do?" Rachel asked. I thought about Dr. Wilson's question about what would be more painful, maintaining the status quo or disrupting it. For the first time, the answer was crystal clear. I'm going to Thanksgiving, I said. Whether Stephanie wants me there or not. It's time to break this pattern. Rachel smiled. Then I'm right there with you. With Thanksgiving just 2 weeks away, I knew I needed more than just determination. I needed a strategy. And part of that strategy involved understanding exactly what I was walking into. If Stephanie had been spreading lies about me, I needed to know what those lies were and who might still be in my corner. My first call was to Uncle Martin. As my father's brother and someone who had noticed the family dynamic years ago, he might have insights that could help me. Jason, good to hear from you, he answered, his voice warm. How's life in Boston? It's good, Uncle Martin. But I'm calling about something specific. I explained the situation with Stephanie and the Thanksgiving disinvitation. He was quiet for a moment before sighing heavily. I wish I could say I'm surprised, but I'm not. Stephanie's always been, well, let's say protective of her position in the family. But this is a new low, even for her. Have you heard anything about texts I supposedly sent criticizing Mom and Dad? No, nothing like that. But Stephanie did mention to your dad that you've been different lately. More distant, less interested in family matters. Said you were too busy with your big city life to care about what happens back home. The manipulation was so obvious now that I could see it clearly. None of that is true. I've been trying to rebuild connections with everyone these past couple of years. I believe you, Jason. And for what it's worth, I think you should come to Thanksgiving. Your parents' house is big enough for everyone, and you have just as much right to be there as Stephanie does. His support bolstered my resolve. Thanks, Uncle Martin. I appreciate that. One more thing you should know, he added. You might want to talk to your Aunt Margaret, your mom's sister. She and your mom had a similar dynamic growing up. Margaret might understand better than anyone what you're dealing with. I'd never been particularly close to Aunt Margaret. She lived in Seattle and rarely attended family gatherings. Now I wondered if there was more to her absence than just geographic distance. I found her number and called the next day. After brief pleasantries, I explained my situation. To my surprise, she laughed, not unkindly, but with a knowing edge. Oh, Jason. You've just described my entire childhood with your mother. Susan was always the golden child, and I was always the problem. Our parents couldn't see past the roles they'd assigned us. Her voice softened. I'm sorry you're experiencing the same thing with Stephanie. It's a painful pattern. Did you ever try to change it? I asked. Yes, once. About 20 years ago, I confronted Susan about it directly. It didn't go well. She couldn't see the pattern because acknowledging it would mean reconsidering her entire identity. We didn't speak for 3 years afterward. My heart sank. So there's no hope? I didn't say that. Margaret replied. Susan and I have a relationship now. It's not perfect, but it's honest. The difference is that I stopped expecting her to change and instead changed how I responded to her. I set boundaries, stopped playing my assigned role, and built a life that didn't revolve around gaining her approval. Her words resonated deeply with what Dr. Wilson had said about family systems. Do you think I should still go to Thanksgiving, even though Stephanie says I'm not welcome? That depends on what you want to achieve. If you're going to try to change Stephanie, you'll likely be disappointed. But if you're going to stand in your truth and refuse to be cast out of your own family, then yes, I think you should go. After speaking with Margaret, I reached out to a few family friends who had known us growing up. Mrs. Peterson, our next-door neighbor for 15 years, expressed shock at the idea that I wouldn't be welcome at a family gathering. That doesn't sound right at all, she said. Just last month your mother was showing me pictures of you and Rachel, talking about how proud she was of you. Mr. Collins, my dad's longtime friend and golf buddy, was equally surprised. Your dad talks about your work all the time, Jason. He brags about you to anyone who'll listen. These conversations revealed something important. The narrative Stephanie was creating didn't match what my parents were saying to others. Either they were putting on a good face for friends, or Stephanie wasn't accurately representing their feelings. I was mulling over this discrepancy when Megan called unexpectedly. Jason? I've been thinking about our conversation, and something isn't adding up. Her voice was hesitant but determined. I asked Stephanie to show me those texts she said you sent, and she got really defensive. Said her phone deleted them or something. Because they don't exist, Megan. I never sent any texts criticizing Mom and Dad. A beat of silence. I believe you. And I don't think Mom and Dad ever actually said they didn't want you at Thanksgiving. I think Stephanie made that up too. The confirmation of what I'd begun to suspect still hit hard. Why would she do this? I'm not entirely sure, but... Megan paused. Ever since you got that promotion and bought that new car, she's been different when your name comes up. And when Mom showed everyone those pictures of your apartment in Boston, Stephanie barely said a word, but later she made all these comments about how materialistic you've become. The pieces were falling into place. She's jealous. I said, the realization's still somewhat surprising. She's always been the successful one, the one everyone admired. Now that my life is going well, she feels threatened. Megan finished. I think you're right. And Jason? I don't want you to skip Thanksgiving. It wouldn't be the same without you. Having Megan on my side was a significant shift in the family dynamic. For years, she had aligned herself with Stephanie, and now she was questioning that alliance. At work the next day, I confided in my colleague Samuel, who had once mentioned dealing with difficult family dynamics of his own. Sounds like classic golden child syndrome, he said as we grabbed coffee. My brother was the same way. Couldn't stand it when I started doing well for myself. Started telling the family I was becoming too good for them. How did you handle it? I asked. I showed up. Every family gathering, every event. I refused to be pushed out. It was uncomfortable at first, lots of tension. But eventually, my parents started seeing the pattern. Now my brother and I have a decent relationship, not perfect but better. He had to accept that my success didn't diminish his. That evening, Rachel and I sat down to develop a concrete plan for Thanksgiving. We booked our flights, arranged for a rental car, and discussed how to approach different scenarios that might arise. The key is to stay calm, Rachel advised. If you react emotionally, it plays into Stephanie's narrative that you're the dramatic one. If you stay factual and composed, it's harder for her to control the situation. We role-played various confrontations, with Rachel taking on the role of Stephanie and helping me craft measured, clear responses. We practiced what I would say if Stephanie claimed I wasn't invited, if my parents seemed confused by my presence, or if false accusations were made. Remember, Rachel said after one particularly intense practice session, you're not going there to punish Stephanie or make her look bad. You're going there to reclaim your place in your family and break a harmful pattern. I nodded, feeling more prepared than I had ever been to face my family dynamics head-on. I know. This isn't about getting revenge. It's about getting healthy. As Thanksgiving approached, I felt a strange mix of anxiety and determination. The old Jason would have accepted Stephanie's declaration that I wasn't welcome. The new Jason was ready to stand in his truth, regardless of the discomfort it might cause. The night before our flight, I received a text from Uncle Martin. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Your parents have no idea about any of this drama. Just so you know. This final confirmation that my parents had never agreed to exclude me solidified my resolve. This wasn't just about standing up for myself anymore. It was about exposing a pattern of manipulation that had shaped our family for too long. The flight from Boston to Minneapolis was smooth, but my nerves were anything but. As Rachel and I collected our rental car and headed toward my parents' suburban home, I mentally reviewed our plan. We would arrive around noon, just as the family would be gathering but before the main meal preparations would be in full swing. We'd bring flowers for my mom and a good bottle of scotch for my dad, normal gifts for the holiday, acting as if nothing was amiss. Ready? Rachel asked as we pulled onto my parents' street. The familiar line of maple trees, now bare in the November chill, led the way to the two-story colonial where I'd grown up. As ready as I'll ever be, I replied, squeezing her hand before turning into the driveway. Several cars were already parked in front: Stephanie and Thomas's SUV, Megan's compact car, Uncle Martin's truck, and a couple I didn't recognize, probably belonging to other relatives. The house was decorated for the holiday, with a fall wreath on the door and pumpkins lining the front steps. We gathered our bags and the gifts and approached the front door. Rather than ring the bell, I used my key, a small but deliberate choice to establish that I belonged there. The scent of roasting turkey and sage stuffing hit me immediately as we stepped into the foyer. Voices and laughter echoed from the kitchen and living room. For a moment, it felt like any other Thanksgiving from years past. Then Stephanie emerged from the kitchen, wine glass in hand. She froze mid-step when she saw me, her face draining of color. "Jason? What are you doing here?" Her voice was sharp enough to draw attention. Heads turned from the living room. "Happy Thanksgiving, Stephanie," I said calmly, hanging up my coat as if nothing was unusual. "Rachel and I are here for the family gathering, of course." My mother appeared next, wiping her hands on her apron. Her expression shifted from surprise to delight. "Jason! Rachel! I didn't realize you were coming!" She rushed forward to hug us both. Over Mom's shoulder, I could see Stephanie's face hardening. "Mom," she interjected, "I thought we discussed this. About Jason not coming this year." Mom pulled back, looking confused. "What? No, we didn't discuss anything like that. Why wouldn't Jason come?" Dad entered from the living room, glass of beer in hand. "Son! Great to see you!" He embraced me warmly, then shook Rachel's hand. "Wasn't sure you'd make it this year since we hadn't heard your plans." The pieces clicked into place. Stephanie hadn't just told me I wasn't welcome, she deliberately kept my parents in the dark about our conversation, probably planning to tell them I had chosen not to come. "Actually," I said, maintaining my composure despite the anger bubbling up, "Stephanie called me 2 weeks ago and explicitly said I wasn't welcome this year. That you all had decided it would be better if I didn't come." My parents' faces registered shock. My father turned to Stephanie. "Is that true? Did you tell your brother he wasn't welcome in our home?" Stephanie's expression shifted quickly, her eyes darting around as if looking for an escape route. It wasn't like that." Jason's twisting my words. "I just thought, with all the tension lately." "What tension?" Mom asked, genuinely perplexed. Megan stepped forward from the hallway where she'd been watching. "There hasn't been any tension, Steph. You've been the one talking about Jason behind his back, saying he thinks he's too good for us now." The living room had gone silent, with everyone's attention now focused on our unfolding drama in the foyer. Uncle Martin stood in the doorway, arms crossed, a knowing look on his face. "Let's not do this right now," Stephanie said, her voice tight. "It's Thanksgiving. We should focus on the meal." "I agree, it's Thanksgiving," I said. Which is why I was surprised to be told my own family didn't want me here. But clearly, that wasn't true. My mother looked between us, distress evident on her face. "I don't understand what's happening. Richard, do you know anything about this?" Dad shook his head, his expression darkening as he turned to Stephanie. "Young lady, I think you owe your brother an explanation." Stephanie's face flushed. "Fine. You want to do this now? Let's do it." She set her wine glass down with a sharp clink. "Jason swoops in a few times a year from his perfect Boston life, with his perfect girlfriend and his perfect job, making everyone else feel inferior. I was trying to protect the family from the tension that always happens when he's around." "What tension, Stephanie?" Dad pressed. "The only tension I'm seeing right now is coming from you. You don't see it because you're blinded by his success now," she snapped. "Suddenly Jason can do no wrong because he makes 6 figures and lives in a fancy apartment. Meanwhile, those of us who stayed close to home, who put family first, get taken for granted." The raw jealousy in her voice silenced the room. I'd suspected it, but hearing it so explicitly was still shocking. Rachel squeezed my hand supportively as I took a deep breath. Stephanie, my success isn't a referendum on yours. There's no competition here except the one you've created. That's easy for you to say when you're winning. She shot back. Winning what? I asked, genuinely curious now. What exactly do you think I've won? She gestured wildly. Everyone's approval. Mom and Dad are so proud of MIT Jason with his tech job and Boston apartment. No one cares that I've been killing myself at my company for years. No one notices the work I put in to keep this family connected while you were gone. My mother stepped between us. Stephanie, that's not true. We've always been proud of both of you. Of all three of our children. Really? Stephanie's voice was bitter. Then why do you show everyone pictures of Jason's place? Why do you brag about his promotion to all your friends? When's the last time you bragged about anything I've done? The room fell silent again. In that moment, I saw something I'd never fully recognized before. Stephanie had been the golden child for so long that any shift in attention felt like abandonment to her. I think, Uncle Martin said, breaking the tense silence, that we should all sit down. This conversation is long overdue, but we should have it properly, not standing in the hallway. We moved to the living room, where relatives awkwardly made space for us. Thomas, Stephanie's husband, looked deeply uncomfortable but sat supportively beside her. Rachel stayed close to me, her presence a steady anchor. First, my father said once everyone was seated, I want to be very clear. Jason and Rachel are absolutely welcome in this house, today and any day. I'm appalled that anyone would suggest otherwise. He fixed Stephanie with a stern look. Secondly, he continued, I'm hearing some concerning things about family dynamics that apparently have been going on for years. Stephanie, are you saying you feel we don't value your accomplishments? Stephanie's composure was cracking. It's just, everything changed when Jason started doing well in Boston. Suddenly he became the golden child, and I became invisible. I couldn't help but laugh, though there was no humor in it. The golden child? Stephanie, do you have any idea what it was like growing up as your brother? You were always the favorite. Always. I got a job at 16 to buy my own car while Mom and Dad gave you a new Honda. They missed my state science fair win because you had a cold. They barely made it to my college graduation because of your emergency. And you think you're the invisible one? Megan nodded, adding quietly, He's right, Steph. Jason was never the favorite growing up. It was always you. Stephanie looked genuinely shocked. That's not how I remember it. Of course it isn't, I said. Because you've always been at the center of this family. You've never had to fight to be seen or heard or valued. My mother's eyes were filled with tears. Jason, I had no idea you felt this way. We never meant to make you feel less important. Intent and impact are different things, Mom, I said gently. I know you didn't intentionally favor Stephanie, but the impact was real. And now you feel we're favoring Jason? Dad asked Stephanie, who nodded mutely. So neither of you feels adequately appreciated, Uncle Martin summarized. But instead of talking about it directly, you've been engaging in this silent war, with Stephanie trying to exclude Jason from family gatherings and presumably talking about him behind his back. Put so plainly, the situation sounded absurd. I could see Stephanie recognized it too, as her shoulders slumped slightly. I never sent any negative texts about Mom and Dad, I said, addressing the room but looking at Stephanie. Those were made up. Stephanie's face flushed again. I know, she admitted quietly. I was angry, and I wanted them to be on my side. Your side against whom? My father asked sharply. This isn't a competition, Stephanie. We're a family. It's felt like a competition my whole life, she said, tears now streaming down her face. First to be the perfect daughter, then to be the successful one, then to be the one who stayed close to home. And now Jason's winning at everything, and I can't compete anymore. Her raw honesty cracked something open in the room. For perhaps the first time, Stephanie was expressing her insecurities without disguising them as attacks. I never wanted to compete with you, I told her. I just wanted to be seen for who I am, not measured against you. And when I finally built a life where I felt valued for myself, you tried to cut me out of the family entirely. I was scared," she whispered. "Scared that if you became the favorite, there wouldn't be room for me anymore." The meal was delayed as we continued talking, laying bare years of misunderstandings, perceived slights, and genuine hurts. My parents listened, visibly distressed to learn how their actions had affected both of us. Megan shared her perspective of growing up watching the dynamic between Stephanie and me, how she'd aligned with Stephanie out of self-preservation. Eventually, Thomas went to the kitchen and returned with plates of appetizers. "I think we could all use some food while we talk," he said pragmatically. The simple act of sharing food seemed to release some of the tension. Uncle Martin shared stories of his own complicated relationship with my father growing up. Aunt Margaret, who had arrived midway through our conversation, spoke about her experiences with my mother. "Families are systems," she explained, echoing what Dr. Wilson had told me. "We all play our assigned roles until someone disrupts the pattern. Today, that disruption is happening, and it's uncomfortable but necessary." As the afternoon progressed, Stephanie's defenses continued to crumble. When we finally moved to the dining room for the delayed Thanksgiving meal, she approached me as everyone was finding their seats. "I'm sorry," she said simply. "I was wrong to try to exclude you. And I've been wrong about a lot of things." It wasn't a complete resolution. Years of complex dynamics couldn't be solved in one afternoon, but it was a start. We sat down to turkey and stuffing as a family, shaken but somehow more authentic than we had been in years. The immediate aftermath of our Thanksgiving confrontation was both exhausting and cathartic. After the meal, as relatives helped clean up and conversations broke into smaller groups, my parents pulled me aside to the den, the same room where I'd once been lectured about my grades while Stephanie's identical report card had earned effusive praise. "Jason," my mother began, her eyes still red from crying earlier, "I don't know what to say except that I'm sorry. I had no idea you felt so overlooked growing up." Dad nodded, his usual confident demeanor subdued. "Son, if we made you feel less valued than your sister, that was never our intention. But intentions don't matter as much as impact, as you said. I'm not looking for apologies," I told them honestly. "I just want us to see these patterns so we can change them. I want a relationship with my family where I'm accepted for who I am, not compared to Stephanie or anyone else." "We want that too," Dad said, placing a hand on my shoulder. "And we're proud of you, not just for your career success, but for having the courage to speak your truth today. That couldn't have been easy." It wasn't. Even now, part of me was waiting for the other shoe to drop, for them to somehow turn this around and make me the problem again. But the look in their eyes suggested a genuine awakening to dynamics they'd been blind to for decades. Uncle Martin joined us briefly before leaving. "You did good today, kid," he said, embracing me. "Standing in your truth isn't easy, especially in this family. But it was necessary. Thanks for your support," I told him. "It made a difference knowing you saw what was happening." As Rachel and I prepared to leave for our hotel that evening, we'd decided staying at my parents' house might be too intense after the day's events. Megan approached us. "I should have seen it sooner," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I always knew something was off about how Stephanie talked about you, but it was easier to go along with it than to question it. You were the youngest," I reminded her. "You were just trying to navigate a complicated dynamic." "Still," she insisted, "I want you to know I'm sorry for the times I took her side without thinking. And I'm glad you came today, despite what she told you." Her apology meant more than I expected. Megan and I had never been close, our relationship primarily defined by her alliance with Stephanie. Perhaps now we could build something more authentic. Stephanie and Thomas left before us, without much of a goodbye. Her face was a mask of conflicting emotions: embarrassment, anger, sadness, perhaps even relief. I knew the conversation wasn't over between us, but we both needed space to process what had happened. Back at our hotel, Rachel and I collapsed onto the bed, emotionally drained but somehow lighter. "You were amazing today," she said, curling against my side. "You stood your ground without becoming cruel or defensive. I'm proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you," I told her truthfully. "Having you there made me stronger." "What happens now?" she asked. "I don't know exactly," I admitted. "But whatever it is, it'll be more honest than what came before." The days after Thanksgiving brought a flurry of communication. My parents called daily, sometimes just to check in, other times to share memories that suddenly made more sense in light of our conversation. They were making an effort to see me clearly, perhaps for the first time. Stephanie, however, remained silent until the following Monday, when a lengthy email appeared in my inbox. It was a mixture of defensiveness and vulnerability, accusations interspersed with admissions. "I still think you don't understand what it's like to be measured against your success," she wrote. "But I realize now that you felt the same way growing up. Maybe we were both fighting for the same thing all along, to be seen for ourselves." It wasn't a full apology, but it was an acknowledgement of my experience, which felt like a significant step forward. I responded with equal honesty, acknowledging her feelings while maintaining my boundaries. "I understand feeling threatened by someone else's success," I wrote. "But trying to cut me out of the family wasn't the answer. I hope we can build a relationship based on mutual respect rather than competition." The weeks that followed brought gradual shifts in family dynamics. My parents became more conscious of how they spoke about each of their children, making efforts to acknowledge our individual strengths without comparisons. Megan began calling me directly instead of always going through Stephanie, building our sibling relationship independent of our older sister. Stephanie's response was more complex. She alternated between radio silence and awkward attempts at normal conversation. From Megan, I learned that Stephanie was seeing a therapist to work through her feelings about our family dynamic, a step I found both surprising and encouraging. As Christmas approached, the question of another family gathering loomed. My parents tentatively suggested we all come together again. "I think it might be too soon," I told them during a video call. "What if we try something different this year? Rachel and I would love to host a small gathering at our place in Boston. Maybe you and Megan could come?" They agreed eagerly, and to my surprise, expressed relief at the alternative arrangement. "Stephanie and Thomas are going to his family this year anyway," Mom explained. She thought it might be good to give everyone some space. It was the first time I could remember Stephanie voluntarily stepping back from being the center of a family occasion, and it felt like a small but significant shift. In mid-December, Rachel and I welcomed my parents and Megan to our apartment. We gave them a tour of our neighborhood, took them to our favorite restaurants, and created new holiday traditions untethered from old family patterns. Without Stephanie present, my parents seemed more relaxed, more curious about my life, and more openly appreciative of the home Rachel and I had built together. On Christmas Eve, as we sat around our small table enjoying dessert, Dad raised his glass. "To new beginnings," he said, his eyes meeting mine with a warmth that had once been reserved primarily for my sister. "And to the courage it takes to break old patterns." We clinked glasses, and for the first time in my life, I felt fully present and accepted in my family, not as Stephanie's brother or the family outcast, but simply as Jason. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I checked my phone to find a text from Stephanie. "Merry Christmas. I hope you're all having a good time." It was simple, free from passive-aggressive undertones or hidden agendas. I replied with equal simplicity. "Merry Christmas to you and Thomas too." It wasn't a dramatic reconciliation, but it was a step towards something healthier, a relationship based on who we actually were rather than the roles we'd been assigned. And for now, that was enough. 6 months after that fateful Thanksgiving confrontation, our family landscape had transformed in ways I never could have imagined. The shifts weren't always dramatic or linear, change rarely is, but the cumulative effect was profound. My parents visited Boston again in the spring, this time specifically to help Rachel and I look at potential homes in the suburbs. As we toured a charming colonial with a spacious backyard, my father pulled me aside. You know, son, I've been doing a lot of thinking these past months, he said, his voice carrying a new thoughtfulness that had emerged since our Thanksgiving conversation. I realized I never really saw you clearly when you were growing up. I was so caught up in my own expectations that I missed who you actually were. It's okay, Dad. I started, but he shook his head. No, it's not okay. But I'm grateful we have the chance to do better now. He gestured to the house around us. I'm proud of the life you've built, Jason. Not because of what you've achieved, but because of who you are. These moments of genuine connection with my parents had become more frequent. They were learning to see me, and themselves, with new clarity. They'd even started seeing a family therapist to work through their own patterns and blind spots. My relationship with Megan had blossomed in unexpected ways. Freed from the shadow of Stephanie's influence, she'd revealed herself to be thoughtful, funny, and fiercely loyal. She'd visited Boston twice since Christmas, and we'd developed inside jokes and shared interests that had nothing to do with our family dynamics. It's like I have a brother for the first time, she told me during her last visit. I mean, you were always my brother, but now I actually know you. Stephanie remained the most complex piece of our family puzzle. After months of limited contact and therapy on her part, she'd reached out with an invitation to meet when Rachel and I visited Minneapolis in April. We met at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown, just the two of us. I've been working through a lot, she said after we'd settled with our drinks. My therapist helped me see that I've built my entire identity around being the successful one, the perfect daughter. When you started doing well in Boston, it felt like you were taking that away from me. I never wanted to take anything from you, I told her. I just wanted to build my own life. I know that now, she admitted. But it's still hard sometimes. I'm learning to find my value beyond comparison, but it's a process. For what it's worth, I said, I always admired you growing up. You seemed so confident, so certain of your place in the world. I wanted that for myself. She looked genuinely surprised. Really? I always thought you had it all figured out. Even when we were kids, you seemed so self-contained, like you didn't need anyone's approval. We both laughed at how completely we'd misread each other all these years. It wasn't an instant reconciliation, but it was the beginning of a more authentic relationship, one based on who we actually were rather than the roles we'd been assigned. By summer, our family had established new patterns of interaction. Group texts that once revolved around Stephanie's schedule now included everyone's input equally. Family decisions were made with consideration for all members, not just the loudest voice. And perhaps most importantly, the unspoken competition that had defined our relationships for decades had begun to dissolve. In June, Rachel and I invited both my family and hers to Boston for a special announcement. We'd closed on our first home, a beautiful colonial in a suburb west of the city, and wanted to share the news in person. But we had another announcement too, one that would change everything. As we gathered in the backyard of our new home, Rachel and I stood together, hands intertwined. We have something to share with all of you, I began, looking around at the faces of the people we loved most. Rachel and I are expecting. We're going to have a baby in January. The joy that erupted was genuine and universal. My mother cried happy tears, my father hugged me with uncharacteristic emotion, and Megan immediately started planning her role as the cool aunt. But it was Stephanie's reaction that surprised me most. After the initial excitement, she pulled me aside. You're going to be an amazing father, Jason, she said, her eyes sincere. That kid is lucky to have you. Thank you, I said, touched by her genuine support. That means a lot coming from you. I've been thinking, she continued, about how we grew up. I don't want your child to experience what we did, the comparison, the competition. I want to be the kind of aunt who sees your child for exactly who they are. I'd like that, I told her. And when you have kids someday, I promise to do the same. She smiled, a hint of her old confidence returning but without the edge of competition. Deal. Later that evening, as our families mingled in the warm summer twilight, Rachel found me watching everyone from the porch steps. "Penny, for your thoughts," she said, settling beside me. "I was just thinking about how different this gathering feels from any family event I've ever experienced," I admitted. "There's no tension, no walking on eggshells. Everyone just seems present. It took courage to break the pattern," she reminded me. "Standing up for yourself at Thanksgiving could have gone very differently." She was right. By refusing to accept Stephanie's declaration that I wasn't welcome, I'd set in motion changes that had transformed our entire family system. It hadn't been easy or immediate, but it had been necessary. "You know," I said, "when Stephanie called to tell me I wasn't welcome at Thanksgiving, it felt like the ultimate rejection. But looking back, it might have been the best thing that could have happened. It forced us all to confront patterns we'd been living with for decades." Rachel nodded. "Sometimes the most painful moments lead to the most important growth." As summer turned to fall, and fall to winter, our family continued to evolve. We weren't perfect, old habits occasionally resurfaced, and we had to remind each other of our commitment to healthier patterns. But the foundation had shifted permanently. When our son, Noah Thomas Mitchell, was born on a snowy January morning, he entered a family transformed by truth and courage. My parents arrived the next day, followed by Megan, and then, a few days later, Stephanie and Thomas. Each of them held Noah with a reverence that transcended old rivalries and roles. "He has your eyes," Stephanie said as she cradled him. "And maybe Mom's nose. He's perfectly himself," I replied. "That's all I want him to be." She looked up at me, understanding passing between us. "That's all any of us ever wanted." And in that moment I knew that the greatest gift I could give my son wasn't success or achievement or status. It was the freedom to be seen and loved exactly as he was. By breaking the patterns that had defined my own childhood, I was creating space for him to write his own story, free from the roles and expectations that had constrained Stephanie and me for so long. The journey from being unwelcome at a family gathering to creating a family built on authenticity and acceptance had been challenging, painful at times, but ultimately transformative. The call that was meant to exclude me had instead become the catalyst for genuine inclusion, not just for me, but for all of us. So if you're facing similar family dynamics, if you feel unseen or unwelcome in places where you should belong, remember this. Sometimes the greatest act of love, for yourself and for your family, is to stand in your truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Breaking unhealthy patterns isn't easy, but the authentic connections that can emerge on the other side are worth every difficult conversation, every moment of vulnerability. What about you? Have you ever had to stand up to family dynamics that weren't serving anyone? How did you handle it? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more authentic conversations about family, growth, and healing. Remember, sometimes the places where we feel least welcome lead us to create the most welcoming spaces of all. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I wish you courage on your own path to authentic connection.